Hi, welcome to another Divorce Tip Tuesday. I'm Cathy Meyer, certified divorce coach, and we're here with divorcedmoms.com. Today, I want to talk about the emotional harm that a narcissistic parent can do to children during and after divorce. It only makes sense that a narcissistic parent is going to harm a child emotionally, whether there's a divorce or not. But here's the thing, divorce adds a whole new level of conflict. It adds a whole new level of stress, which causes a narcissistic parent to go into overdrive. They become so self-focused that the damage they do to their children can have long-lasting consequences. It's a subject that is important to me because I watched the damage that was done to my children. And I'll give you some examples throughout today's video. But first, let me tell you, even before he had filed for divorce, he had left home maybe a week and a half, and not even told me we were divorcing. And he went to our children's schools. We had a 14-year-old and a 7-year-old. He went to the 14-year-old's school and checked him out of school. It was about lunchtime, a little bit after. And when they got in the car, my 14-year-old asked why. And his father told him, don't ask questions. We're going to Taylor's school to get him. When we get him, we will talk about it. So my 14-year-old told me that the first thing that he thought of was that something bad had happened to me, which terrified him. And they drove to my younger son's school, and his dad left him in the car to worry and ruminate over what could be wrong. He went in the school and checked the 7-year-old out of school and put them in the car and turned around and looked at him and said, your mom and I are divorcing. I'm never coming home again. And of course, these were children who had never even seen their parents fight. They didn't know that there was anything drastic going on in the marriage. I didn't know there was anything that drastic going on in the marriage. But he did that to them without talking to me, without giving me the opportunity for both of us to sit down and explain the situation to our children in a way that did not dump emotional garbage on them that they weren't responsible for. When he told them that he was getting a divorce, never coming home again, they started asking questions. They said he refused to answer the questions. I was at home in my study. I'm sitting there and I hear his car pull up in the driveway. And I think, well, that's odd. The next thing I hear is my child screaming and his car pulling out of the driveway. And I ran outside to the driveway, and my 7-year-old was on the driveway just screaming and crying. And my 14-year-old was standing there weeping, and he dropped him off and left. That's what the narcissist does. They do the damage, and you're responsible for cleaning it up. That's what parenting after divorce from a narcissist is. Your job will be to undo the damage the narcissist does. So if you're already there, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not there yet, get ready. It's about to happen. I want to go over 8 ways in which your narcissistic ex can damage your children. And I'm going to be checking my whiteboard because I have a little sinus headache, so there's no memorizing today. Number 1, your child won't be heard or validated. Just like that day in the car, my children weren't heard, their feelings weren't validated. It's as if the narcissist becomes all-consuming with himself, and there's no room. I don't think they handle stress well. And when they get in that frame, that place where they're highly stressed and wrapped up in it, they can't deal with anyone else. And they don't empathize anyway. So why would you expect them to be able to go through a divorce, lose a marriage, and at the same time think of anyone other than themselves? So, number two, uh, your child will learn that anything real to him is not safe. The only thing safe is what the narcissistic parent thinks is real. An example from my own situation: 4 or 5 years after we divorced, I moved out of state, and I had given my ex 2 months notice that I was moving, and I had given him the opportunity to spend spring break with my son, and he didn't communicate with me. He didn't respond to me, acted like he didn't know what was going on. And it was about 3 months after we moved before our children heard from him again. And he had become involved with a woman, and when he would email the children, it was all about him and his life. And Taylor, he never asked anything about the children, but the youngest one emailed him one day and said, "Dad, it hurts my feelings when you don't talk about me, when you don't ask how I'm doing, and you don't ask what's happening in my life. All you do is talk about your new life." And he responded and told him, he said, "What new life? I'm not living a new life. I'm living the same old life I've always lived." So see, Taylor's view of the situation wasn't real. His father's view of the situation was real. And Taylor was shamed. In fact, his father told him in that email, "If you're feeling bad, I'm not responsible for your feelings." So there you go. Number three, the narc parent will share too much and require it be kept secret. Yeah, nothing is sacred. You don't talk to your child about divorce. I didn't. With legal issues, I didn't. It was not their responsibility to take care of legal issues that I was going through with their father, or emotional issues. I did not discuss those things with my children. Their father did, however. I remember we went through a custody case, and my son at the time, I think, was 15. And I looked back in the courtroom, he was sitting with his father, and he had the court file open, reading it. His father had given him the court file to read. And you think to yourself, talk about sharing. There's no reason a 15-year-old would need to know this. But that's what the narc parent does. If they're not sharing truths that are happening, they're making up things that are happening and sharing. And then they're requiring a child to keep it secret. Don't tell your mother I told you this. That leaves the child with a vat of junk that wasn't theirs to deal with in the first place. And now they have no one to help them deal with it because they have to keep it secret. Number 4, your child is not going to be emotionally nourished by a narcissistic parent. there's just no way that a narcissistic parent who is angry with an ex is capable of emotionally nourishing a child. Don't expect it. You're going to have to take up the slack. Number 5, your child is going to be expected to be there for the narcissistic parent. The narcissistic parent is never going to be there for the child. If it's a baseball game, high school graduation, preschool graduation, if the narc shows up, it's because there's something in it for him. He's not there for the child. It's because there's something in it for him. But my ex didn't show up for any of those things. When my oldest was baptized at 15, he showed up and sat in the balcony and did not even tell our son he was there. But he was so angry that he could not come down and sit with the family. He could not come down and speak to his son after the baptism, because that would have meant being in the same vicinity of the church as me. So, he just could not extend himself to validate emotionally what his child had just gone through. Number 6, the lack of attention for your child's needs. They don't worry about anyone's needs but themselves. If your child needs braces, they're going to say the child doesn't need braces. If your child needs a hug, they're going to be hard-pressed to get a hug out of the narcissist. There's just no emotional nourishment. There's no attention given unless there's something in it for the narcissist, unless it can in some way make the narcissist look good. Okay, if you've got a situation where your child and the narcissist is around a group of people that the narcissist wants to impress, yeah, your child's going to get what they need. But if that child is alone with the narcissist, it's going to be like being on an island by themselves. And I know that a lot of you know what I'm talking about, because I've heard from women who say, and men who say, my child goes to spend the weekend with their father or mother and they play video games all weekend, or they're parked in front of the TV all weekend. So it's no emotional nourishment, no attention. Let's see, number 7. The narcissistic parent is going to take opportunities to humiliate and shame your child. This is going to create low self-esteem in your child. But my ex, okay, let me give you another example. When the 7-year-old was an adult, he had been diagnosed with a health issue that required a medication that was, one of the side effects was it can cause cavities. And he had taken this, by the time he was 17, he had taken it, or by the time he was 27, this is when this incident happened, he had taken it for 10 years. And his teeth, he went to the dentist regularly, but there was only so much the dentist could do unless you had $30,000 to hand to the dentist. And I didn't, and he didn't. But his father had reached out to him after years and years of not communicating with him or seeing him. And my son and his wife moved to the town where his father lived. And his father looked at him and said, "Are you doing meth?" And my son said, "What do you mean? What makes you think I'm doing meth?" He said, "Well, your teeth look like a meth user." Well, his teeth didn't look like a meth user, but his father, Mr. Perfect, um, had to bring attention to it, just shamed and humiliated him. And it's my son to this day is just, he doesn't feel he's worthy, because instead of saying, "Oh, buddy, that medicine has really messed up your teeth. Let me take some money and take you to the dentist and get it fixed." That's what a parent does. The narc parent says, "Oh, you must be doing meth. Your teeth are a mess." And no offer to help make the situation better. For one thing, I think it probably made my ex-husband feel good about himself because he could feel better than his son. And that's very important. But number 8, and all of this, leads to children who have a high probability of suffering PTSD symptoms, depression, anxiety, and other mental health problems. It's not the person, the narc, the narcissistic parent, the person who needs to be in therapy, who needs to learn how to be insightful, is not the person who ends up in therapy, is the child of the narcissistic parent. And you have to be certain that you're safeguarding against that when it comes to your child. And, there may not be much you can do, but I suggest, when I talk to parents who are going through this, I suggest, okay, a narcissist parents with a lack of empathy. So what you've got to do is become an empathetic parent. You've got to make up for what they're not getting from the narcissist. In other words, as a parent, you have to do double duty. When I say empathetic parenting, I mean parent with empathy and love. Parent by validating their feelings. Parent by letting them know that regardless of what is said and done, that they don't have to keep secrets from you, that they can come to you and tell you whatever they need to tell you, and get them into therapy if you see signs of distress. It's very important. Both of my children are now 35 and 28, and they're wonderful young men. They're, I have a granddaughter. They all have good careers. They're both married, and they're flourishing. But it took a lot of work to get them to the place they are today, all because of the damage done by their father. So pay attention. Keep an eye on your children. And I would like to say stop him from damaging them, but there's really nothing you can do because the family court system has no insight when it comes to what personality disorders do, what role it plays in divorce, especially for children. So I'm glad you dropped by. I'm glad we had the opportunity to discuss this. I will see you next time, and thanks.